Hello, welcome back. We're on day 2 of PDAC and I'm with Lon Shaver, the president of SilverCorp Metals. Lon, good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Let's just kick your first time on the show. So why don't you just introduce who the company is to begin with?
Sure. Well, SilverCorp is a company with a track record of profitable operations. As the name implies, we do produce silver, but also lead and zinc, and an 18-year track record of building and growing mines and operating them and profiting them and generating free cash flow.
Just give us a bit more flavor on the operations, if you don't mind.
Sure. Well, our main operating asset is the Ying mining district, and we have 7 individual mines that are feeding into 2 milling facilities. And that's located in Henan province, right in the central part of China. And we have another mine called the GC mine that's in the south of the country, in Guangdong province. And both these mining operations produce silver that we deliver in lead concentrates, and as well as zinc concentrates. And these are sold and shipped to smelters domestically in China.
Okay, perfect. And just a bit of housekeeping, just run through your capital structure as it sounds.
177 million shares outstanding approximately, no debt. We've got cash on the balance sheet of 200 million. And we also have an investment portfolio mark to market that's worth about 140 million US.
And what's the current market cap?
About 425 million US.
Okay, so enterprise value less than 100 million?
Yeah. So that really speaks to the incredible and compelling value opportunity for investors right now. Because on that look-through basis, when you do that enterprise value, it is approximately what our operating cash flow was over the past 12 months on a trailing basis.
Well, it's interesting as well, because when I was looking at the company before this interview, it seems as though you've got some growth plans, not only with the existing operations, but also with M&A as well. But before we go on to that, I mean, trading at essentially operating revenue in terms of market cap or enterprise value, that seems pretty low. When you're talking to, obviously you've got a pretty good institutional shareholder base at the moment. I think a third of your book is about is institutions, and they're some of the largest in the world. But what are they saying to you in terms? What's their current feedback in terms of why you are in the position you're in?
Well, I think there's no doubt that investors seem to be comfortable or ignorant of the fact that many Western companies have their manufacturing bases and are highly exposed to China for delivering their products. And I think that seems to sort of ignore that in many of the Western stocks that people are trading. But us as a mining company, or a bit of a rarity, a bit of a unique animal in the sense of having these solid mining assets located in China that have been profitable, delivered dividends, and allowed us to obviously repatriate capital. But for some investors, it's just a bit of a concern. So I think that's what's led to us not having as broad of an investor base as some of our peer companies. Okay. And that ties into our growth strategy, which is to grow and add assets and diversify out in China and add more producing operations that we can bring on stream and deliver again those great cash flows.
Okay, before we go on to the potential M&A possibility in Tanzania that you guys have already announced with All Group, but talk us through the current operations, because obviously you are looking at potentially scaling those up at the moment. How could that look next year?
Yeah, I mean, and that's really focused on the Ying operations. And so what we're doing there's a number of different initiatives going on right now at both from the mining and the processor standpoint. On the mining side, we're looking to make a shift to more mechanization. So changing the mining method in certain areas of the mine, bringing in some new equipment, which will reduce the labor intensity and allow us to operate those mines and get access also to some very attractive pockets of resources and reserves that right now are kind of distant, or there's not the scale and ability to get there. So that's on the mining side. What we're also looking from a processing standpoint is adding XRT sorting. So with this more mechanized method, we'll have a bit higher dilution on the mining. So we're going to use XRT sorting to upgrade the mill feed to a higher grade. We're looking at an expansion at our milling facilities, where we think we could bring on another 1,500 tons per day at a very modest capital cost, and actually have that done by the end of the year. Mm-hmm. And that all ties into with the other project we've been working on, which is to build a third tailings storage facility to handle both the increased throughput, but then also factoring in the long mine life that we have ahead of us based off of our reserves.
And okay, so mine's been running for about 20 years, right? Currently, how long do you have left? About 15?
15 based off of a reserve.
Okay.
And then the resources on top of that, and It's a 70 square kilometer package. We know much more higher resources or potential based on these vein structures. And even in the last few years, we've made discoveries of new mineralizing systems that have allowed us, for example, to bring up our gold production by targeting some of these gold rerolled copper-rich areas. So there's a lot to come.
Good. Okay, but obviously, like you were saying, that I guess being a Western listed company, you're with assets located in China, there's a bit of a disconnect, mainly because of the jurisdiction there, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I mean, we know specifically certain shareholders where the fund has undergone changes and the mandate has been, no, we just don't want to own anything in China.
Yeah.
So despite the fact that we're one of their choice investments, or just fund mandate required them to liquidate the site.
Yeah, because you're printing cash at the moment, you've got no debt, your fundamentals are phenomenal, but you're undervalued. So what I would say, and again, we will get onto the M&A strategy, but in terms of the corporate strategy, is there anything that you could do differently there? Maybe a secondary listing somewhere else, or is there anything that you think could potentially see some additional value come through for shareholders?
Yeah, we've considered additional listings, and anyone who's followed that SilverCorp acquisition knew that to facilitate the issuance of our shares to the SilverCorp shareholders, we're looking at an ASX listing, and that may still be a possibility. We've considered some other listings as well. But with listings on the TSX and the NYSE American, those are two pretty big markets for global investors to participate in the mining sector. So,
and why are you not listed in Shanghai or in Hong Kong or in an Asian market, given the proximity of the mine?
Well, again, I'd say that's a possibility, but if you look at the company history, we began as a Canadian company, not as a Chinese company. So as a Canadian company that went and pursued assets, and those initial assets that had promise proved to be in China. So it's sort of where we've come at China the other way, as being a Western listed company going into China as opposed to a domestic company coming upwards.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like you said, in the manufacturing realm, that's actually not unheard of. That's pretty normal. But in the mining space, it's pretty unique. So that's a fairly interesting way that you've gone about that. So talk to me about diversification, because obviously you've been touting for a while now, and you've been in conversation with the acquisition of a pretty substantial gold asset in Tanzania. Obviously, that's potentially a new commodity diversification as well as country. So tell me about how the state of play is at the moment, and a little bit about the deposit that you've got your eyes on.
Well, I think that the deposit and the target is entirely consistent with what our strategy has been, and that's look at big projects that are action that we see. It's not a case of acquiring something that's got some indeterminable permitting period, something that we can get in and start working towards building right away, because the objective here is to build another business to generate cash flow. And so that was one of the big appeals to Nyanzaga, in the sense that it has its permits. It's significant in the way of a resource in 3.5 million ounces, and the DFS that SilverCorp put together spoke to a roughly 11-year life, producing 2.5 million ounces of gold per year. So it'll make a meaningful contribution to our production, revenue, cash flow.
Just to correct you, you said 2 million ounces per year. That would be a bit high.
Yeah, it's 2.5 million ounces over
the life of mine. Okay, awesome. Okay, and talk us just through the process. So when did you put the bid in, and how much was the bid? Just talk us a little bit about how that looks.
Well, it's been a pretty lengthy story. We got into discussions with SilverCorp going back to last spring, and that progressed. There were a number of things that had to get done in terms of negotiations, meetings, site visits. So we were ready at the time to sign an agreement in August, which we did, and that was calling for a process whereby shareholders would vote on the acquisition of SilverCorp by SilverCorp. And that was tracking along towards a shareholder meeting in December. And in November, we found out that Perseus had acquired a 19.9 stake in SilverCorp and intended to vote against our merger proposal at the shareholder meeting. And so with those numbers and based on the way those votes worked, they effectively killed the opportunity for a positive vote. We went away, thought about our strategies, and came out in late December, switching from a vote to a tender or acceptance of facility, to a tech structure, so an offer. And so we launched that in late December. with exactly the same consideration that was contemplated under the scheme of arrangement, and with the same court board support.
Okay.
So that was announced in late December. Our offer opened in January, and right now it's open until March 22.
Okay, and so the offer itself, is there a value on the offer? Is it for shares? Is it cash? Or is it a mixture? Combination. Okay.
So ours is a combination of shares and cash. So by taking our offer, SilverCorp shareholders get a bit of cash, 19 cents Australian, and then a fraction of a SilverCorp share for the balance.
Okay.
So that value fluctuates with our share price and exchange rate. And right now it's very close and just a little bit ahead of the 55-cent all cash PD proposal that shareholders have to decide.
Okay, good. And what's their current share price, and is it still an increase?
It's trading a bit higher. So there's also speculators who are anticipating that either us or Perseus are going to bump our offer.
Oh, so they're expecting a bidding war, are they?
They are.
Okay. But bidding wars aside, assume that whether it be this asset or another asset similar to it, you do acquire a second project in a different jurisdiction. I'm just trying to get my head around the strategy, because a lot of the producing companies at the moment are really talking about sort of dividends and shareholder returns, but I think you're looking more for a growth story and a diversification story. What's the long-term strategy? Are you looking at multiple different projects, or is it really just the one for now? Build that, getting that into production, and then look at extending dividends, or is it then growth again moving forward?
Yeah, well, and just to be clear, from a balancing standpoint, we are currently paying dividends.
Yes.
So that's one element of the story for investors. But yes, it is. The objective is to grow the company and add assets to be a bigger platform, a multi-jurisdiction. And so our aim with acquiring SilverCorp would be to get this bedded down, get the construction plan going forward. In the meantime, from a pursuit standpoint, look at some other ideas that we can pad into the pipeline down the road.
Okay.
And potentially leveraging this new platform that we'll have in Africa to look at other assets to grow the company.
Okay, so it sounds like you're striving to be a
multi-asset, multi-jurisdiction,
mid-tier
over the next few years. Yes.
sort of producer around the global. Brilliant. Okay, and I think there's still that. I think you've seen in the industry a shrink of mid-tier global producers. A lot of them have been acquired. So there is probably space for some new entrants in that realm. And I think so. I think that growth sort of story, that's where you sort of see some multiples, especially when you have that jurisdiction diversification, right? So
that's right.
Yeah. Okay. So talk me through next 12 months. Obviously, it's so hard to say at the moment because there's things out of your control in certain extent. But talk us through what the next 12 months looks like. Have you provided any guidance for next year as well?
Well, we haven't given guidance for next year just yet. We're working through some studies. So what we'll be doing with our year-end numbers, and our year-end is March. So at around April, we'll give guidance for the next fiscal year, going through to March 2025.
Okay.
And then a bit later this spring, we're working on right now an updated 43-101 for Yang that will speak to a number of these programs on the mining side, some of the shifts and changes that we're adding. We'll give a new life of mine projection off of an updated reserve and reserve space.
Okay.
So we'll publish that. That'll give a bit more clarity going beyond this next fiscal year in terms of what we expect to Yang. And really, separate from that, it's looking at acquisition targets. And then also within our asset base, the other thing that we have is that full unit. And right now, the two major elements of that are SilverCorp, but also larger than that is the New Pacific position. And we've spoken with them in the past. They've got two very promising projects in Bolivia that are leading up to some catalyst moments here with both technical studies as well as permitting developments.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking to the guys at New Pacific later, but I wouldn't mind actually getting your perspective on this before we do have a chat with them, if you don't mind. What's the long-term strategy from your perspective with New Pacific? Because they are looking like some pretty fantastic, sizable silver deposits in Bolivia. from what you've been telling me about this diversification and moving into different jurisdictions, is this, obviously you're a large shareholder already, is this
Yes.
is this something that you potentially down the line would like to see within your own portfolio as an operating mine managed by SilverCorp, or?
Potentially.
Yeah.
Right now, rather than long-term strategy, it's better to talk about nearer-term strategy, which
Sure.
is one of incubation. And so if you look at what we've done, we've been supportive of what was it, incubating and supporting its progression to get those, make the discovery, identify initial resources, work through the technical studies to determine whether or not it's an economic asset, look at permitting. And I think when some of those candidates have been met, then there'll be some decision points for us, for New Pacific, and for potentially others in the market. And for us, our discipline is always to look at it from a value standpoint. So while it would be great to add that diversification in production, if somebody else, either the market or another strategic, puts a higher value on that asset than we're deriving, then what that will be is a monetization of that.
Sure.
Will generate more value. But if on the other hand things line up right, then it could very well be one of our assets.
Okay, that's decided. And just remind people what your current ownership is in New Pacific.
It's at 27.4%.
So, okay, so not majority. You don't have full control over what happens there. So
Correct.
all right, Lon, just as we're wrapping up, just some final thoughts on the current position of SilverCorp and relative, not to the market and to peers, but really just where you are at this given moment in time.
Well, I think it's quite simple. From a math standpoint, when you look at that market cap, we're in 25 million. And if you back out the 200 billion in cash, and we don't have any debt, and you look at that investment portfolio worth 140, really the market is not paying a lot for those assets that have an established track record, delivering good margins and good free cash flow. And have allowed us to build that war chest of cash, but also continue to reinvest in those assets. So I think from a valuation standpoint, it's an excellent time to take the look.
Perfect. Lon, thank you for your time.
Thank you.